Well, welcome to our webinar. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to discuss how we could get a 50% increase in revenue by closing gaps in selling best practices. How could we budget for success in 2026? Key points we're going to discuss today: challenges in selling, KPIs, key performance indicators that we can influence to dramatically boost sales, motivating the sales team, motivating ourselves, the importance of worthy causes. Let's continue with a case history. This is an example about how, when, and how decision makers make their decisions. So our client sells advertising in physicians' journals. The problem is this: the top brands will only advertise in the best read physician publications. That's the only place they'll advertise, and we're not in the top 10. That's our problem. So we did some research, and we found some wisdom. Most physicians do their research and order samples of new meds in the evening between 7 and 10 p.m. That's what we discovered. And we turned this into a bold vision statement, how using our journal, even though it's not the best read, it's read at the right time, and it leads to action. The outcome: we had a 55% increase in ad pages sold when overall ad pages were down 7%. And that was, because of the impact of the internet. So the thought question we're going to explore here is, what selling principles made this work? And I might add that this program was developed in my first business, where I was selling into a declining market against entrenched, established competition. So how can we increase profitable sales 50%? Improving sales predictability. And how much depends on doing a gap analysis? So if you're doing everything we're going to talk about, you're not going to get a big increase from what we're going to discuss. We're going to focus on key selling KPIs, key performance indicators, forward-looking. We're going to look at getting more leads and inquiries, warm introductions, inquiries converted to pipeline proposals. And we're going to be talking a good bit about PIKs today, payments in kind, and proposals closed. And doing this with a motivated sales team. How do we motivate our team? How do we motivate ourselves? Let's begin by looking at more leads and inquiries. This represents one level of our challenge. The competitor, we're doing business development in this case. The competitor is a trusted advisor. We're a commodity, and it's like we're on a tilted playing field. They roll the ball downhill, we have to kick it uphill. So the first point we're going to talk about is how wisdom helps level the playing field, selling with wisdom. So a prospect may not be willing to talk to us if we're selling because they're not looking to buy, but they typically value wisdom. Wisdom means practical information that the prospect can use that doesn't depend on them buying from us. So it's not self-interested in that way. Now, this is not a substitute for effort. What does that mean? It means you're still going to have to put in a lot of effort. It's just whatever effort you're going to put in is going to work better. You're going to get a better return to the effort you put in. Let's look at a case history. We have a SaaS customer, and the wisdom is going to set up the bold vision. So it's a billing collecting company for martial arts studios. We have about 2,000 of them. And the problem is that we charge twice as much as the low-cost provider. So the prospect says, look, I love your product, but don't make me look stupid. Just meet the competitive price. So what sets up this whole analysis is the wisdom from return mail. Well, there's a stack of return mail sitting in the corner of the office, out of business. So now we do some research. 30% of martial arts studios fail annually. But our clients only have a 5% failure rate. We turn the research, the wisdom, into a bold vision statement. We help reduce bankruptcy risk by 80%. The outcome, we doubled our closing ratio. So thought questions here to consider is, what bold vision do we use? What wisdom do we use? Why is this important? Selling is a tough profession. It's conflict laden. We're trying to get folks to change their behavior. They don't want to change their behavior. It's a harsh emotional environment, failure, unpredictability, radio silence. Maybe what's even worse is the negative imagery associated with selling. Willie Loman, the pathetic failure and death of a salesman, or those slimy con men in Glengarry Glen Ross. Do we want to get up in the morning if we see ourselves as slimy con men and, face this difficult emotional environment? Not so much, but maybe we would as a trusted advisor. So trusted advisor selling has two important implications. It makes the prospect more willing to talk to us. And I'm not saying every time, I'm just saying whatever effort we put in is going to be much greater, and we feel better about ourselves. So a good exercise for you to do, if you haven't done it recently, after this webinar, what wisdom can we bring? If you had 10 people sit around the table, salespeople, executives, and came up with 10 bits of wisdom, we'd always have wisdom to bring to every conversation. And we should prepare that way. We should always have wisdom ready to go. What is the wisdom we're going to bring? Note, selling is a thinking person's profession. More than wisdom, we are heroes because we open the closed mind. The prospect has got a closed mind. Our job is to open the closed mind. That's why these bold vision statements are so important. Our prospect is on a false summit. They're looking down thinking they're in great shape. Our job is to show them we take them to a higher peak of well-being. We open the closed mind. Doing so is a worthy cause, in my view. It gives us self-respect and it fuels us in what is a harsh environment. Let's look at another case history. I have a client, I actually worked with him for 10 years. It's a professional firm, and we're trying to sell value. The problem is there are competitors out there that are like 50% lower on price. The buyer again says, we'd love to do business with you, but don't make us feel stupid. Just lower your price. But the wisdom we got from interviewing our clients is that by advising them, there's tremendous savings in implementation. So you can't just look at our piece of the pie. You have to look at the whole enchilada. And the bold vision statement that was actually confirmed by some of our clients is that our services are free. The outcome, we had a 50% profitable sales increase 3 years in a row. That's each year. So what bold vision do we do? This is another good power of the wisdom of the room exercise. What bold vision do we use? Let's apply this to trade shows, because sometimes the problem is you're just so hard to get through to people, and trade shows could be a place to do this. Well, this is me in a trade show 2 weeks ago, the Print Expo show down in Orlando. First time I worked the show. First hour of the show, a lot of people were walking by. Not so many people were stopping by. And so I came up with an approach using wisdom, bold vision, and bold behavior. Maybe this is something you do. There were 3 groups of people who seemed to be going past the booth. There were the people who were kind of like jogging. I wasn't going to get them. And then there were people who were turning their heads from left to right. I wasn't going to get them. But then there were people who were moving kind of slowly and looking at each booth. And here's what I did. I asked them, are you interested in one idea, one innovative idea that will change your life? I must have pulled 60 people into my booth with that one question. I closed 3 of them. I mean, I had other people who came in, but most of my traffic was just from asking that one question. Are you interested in an innovative idea that will change your life? I use the same thing, by the way, on my day-to-day marketing. It doesn't have the same impact, I grant you. Are you interested in an innovative idea that will change your life? Now, of the people I stopped, I'd say fully 20 to 30% of them said they weren't interested, but I only cared about the ones who stopped. So I now have another 60 people or so in my pipeline because I used wisdom, bold vision, bold behavior. And by the way, when we get to there's a question period at the end. If you want, ask the question, what was, the innovative idea that I offered? Worthy causes are important to us because they motivate us to operate at a high level in a harsh environment. We've looked at trusted advisor, bring wisdom. We've looked at the bold vision. These are sources of self-respect. Slimy con men, hard to operate in a harsh environment. But if we respect what we do and we care about our prospects and we want to bring them wisdom and bold vision, it motivates us. Our objective is to look at ways we can increase profitable sales 50% and improve sales predictability. We're looking at key KPIs. Let's look at warm introductions and the magic moment of access. This is an essential KPI. It's low-hanging fruit. Can we do better here? Let's say you met a client's needs. You are in communication. You confirm they're delighted. They don't have any further needs. You now have a magic moment of access. You can ask for warm introductions, for testimonials. My experience is, I've had about 200 assignments, is most salespeople who are checking in, they're in project management mode and they run right past a selling opportunity. You could ask for something because what makes it a magic moment is they're talking to us, you have access, which is probably the hardest thing, and they love us. They just told us that. Key to this working is our accountability for a do or die program. What does that mean? You got best efforts, do or die. Let's say we set the objective of 1 warm introduction a month. That's our objective, 1 warm introduction a month. Well, we come to the end of the month. If we don't have any, what's our objective for the second month? Best efforts, I'll try again to get 1. Do or die, I need 2 in the second month. So best efforts, you can get 12 zeros. Imagine if you had 10 team members, sales team members, each of them on a do or die 1 warm introduction a month. That's 120 serious new conversations a year. I think we would be swamped with opportunity. Let's look next at 2 things. Inquiries converted to pipeline proposals and proposals closed with a key emphasis on PIKs, payments in kind. Payments in kind is what the prospect does to show they're committed to the process. Could be filling out a credit app, introducing us to a boss. Let's look at these ideas now in the context of the standard sales call, a step-by-step process to initiate and close a sale. There are 3 parts. 1 to 7 sets up the serious conversation. If you do that well, 8 to 12 is your fact-finding, and then 13 to 18 is managing the opportunity. That's what it is. So we start with wisdom as one of our key components of getting to a serious conversation. You got 2 kinds of conversations, safe and serious. Safe, you're never going to get any business. You're just a price check. Serious, compelling need, willing to discuss it. So start with wisdom, sets the stage for our bold vision, like, increase sales up to 50%. When we do this well, it earns the right to answering questions in our fact finding, including discovering what's the urgency and what are the closing conditions. The closing conditions are the series of conditions which, when met, result in the sale. If you think you've got the closing conditions, a good test is, hey, if we meet these things, can we do some business together? Once we think we have the closing conditions, we can prove our case. One of the overlooked closing conditions are the risk needs. So the reason that the playing field is often tilted is they feel comfortable with the incumbent. So we have to level the playing field, we need to meet risk needs. If we do this well, we come to the end of the meeting, we're going to get hopefully a close, but at a minimum a PIK. The prospect is going to do something to show they're serious, that they're committed to the process. Now, PIKs are really, really important because it's the way the prospect shows respect. And in a harsh selling environment with all the rejection, PIKs are like oxygen, a lifeline. Now, we could track our progress with a trusted advisor grid. We want to be seen as trusted advisors. Well, how are we doing? Green, we're a trusted advisor. Yellow, some relationship. Red, no relationship. Let's just look at an example here. We have 3 prospects, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Here's the grid analysis. If you look at the functional decision maker, we're saying we have a great trusted advisor relationship, but not necessarily with everybody else who could influence the decision. Case history. Client is a Fortune 200 company in business over 100 years. As part of the program, we have one-to-ones. Bob comes to a one-to-one, crestfallen, downcast. Bob, what's the matter? Just lost my biggest customer. We've had the client as a company for 40 years. I've covered him for 10 years. Last week, I lost the business, didn't even get a second shot. What happened? Well, a couple of levels up, the new boss came in, that's our Reds here, and brought in their own vendor and threw us out. Bob became a big believer at that point in the trusted advisor relationship grid. Now, this is something we could do, this grid, to both analyze our defensive position with existing customers and also to do a pipeline analysis and track how we're doing with new clients. So key to our self-motivation, first is self-respect, trusted advisor selling. We are heroes. We open the closed mind to make people better off with our bold vision and bold behavior. The last thing I want to mention is this peak experience, the roller coaster. When we close, if you're like me and I've been selling for 40 years, it's a peak experience. But the day after, we feel an absence. It's like an abyss, and it can lead to burnout. My first big close, I closed Brookstone on a package. I was so excited, but then nothing happened for a couple of weeks. This is where sales culture, self-respect, and respect are so important, and particularly PIKs. If the prospect is doing PIKs, they're showing us respect, and from experience, we know they're stepping stones to the next close. So it helps us manage our emotional state as well as moving the sale forward. And of course, the importance of our standard sales call. Well, we know Rome wasn't built in a day, so we're almost at the end of today's webinar. Think about your takeaways, if any, what you might consider changing. In a moment, we have time for 5 to 10 minutes of questions. But beforehand, and just to set up the next month, one more idea, the focus of our next free webinar is transformational pipeline reviews. How could you really amp up your pipeline review? That'll be the subject of next month's free webinar. So now we have some time for questions, about 5 to 10 minutes. Use the chat if you have questions. If you want more information about the worthy causes and sales culture, more case histories, our book Innovate Now, send me an email to andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. All right, let's see what we have for questions. What was the question that you asked in the trade show that pulled people in? Well, that's when I said, are you in the market for one innovative idea? Most of the people who stopped by were business owners, but there were also sales executives. And here's the question. It's called the pre-mortem question. Why will you never close this sale? Or why will this fail? Wait, Andy, don't we have to be positively motivated? Absolutely, we need to be, and we should be. We should be. But we don't want to live in a fool's paradise, do we? Where we just, we overlook obvious things. Things like, remember that story I told where 2 levels up, somebody came in and we lost the sale. So that was the question. Our question again was, why will this never work? Let's see what else we got. Andy, you don't talk much about the importance of compensation and the desire to earn money. Isn't this as important and maybe even more important than all these other issues? Well, yeah, we definitely want people who want to earn money. Absolutely. I see money as making it fair. In other words, if you do a great job, you should be paid a lot of money, and not so much if you don't do a great job. But how do we support the sales team in a harsh environment? It's not an either or, it's an and. Next, strong relationships usually prevail in my business. Isn't it more important to hire salespeople with a strong book of business, or at least a network, rather than focus on these selling techniques? Well, I see that as like a tyranny of the or. I see that as a tyranny of the or scenario. I think both are essential. It's great to hire people who have a network, but how do you make that network effective? Even though they may have a relationship, it's still hard to get incumbents displaced. Next, you place importance on motivation and the worthy cause. I wouldn't say these are bad ideas, but isn't it up to the individual salesperson to be self-motivated? I have my job, salesperson should be doing his or her job. Isn't it rather straightforward? Well, I would just comment again that selling is a rough profession. And if we want to get the best results for the team, we should do what we can to support the sales team. And a great sales culture that helps generate respect and self-respect is part of the formula. Isn't it time-consuming to develop all these relationships over time with wisdom, et cetera? Isn't it true either the prospect is interested in what we have to say or they're not interested? Shouldn't we move on if they're not? What's wrong with that approach? Well, I mean, if you're in a business where there's lots of prospects and you could keep on going, that's fine. But it's kind of transactional. And what I think we usually want to develop is a trusted advisor relationship. I don't know what the statistics are, like you have to make 13 touches. Well, if you're going to be touching people anyway, why not lead with wisdom? Ooh, here's a cynic. It seems we live in an age where people don't make commitments, they're not loyal. Is it really worth it to try to become a trusted advisor? I suppose there are businesses where it could be a fool's errand, but remember, this is part of what gives meaning to our work. And so my view is we should do science. We'll be talking more about this in next month's webinar, but we should be doing science to improve our game. We could experiment every week. I mean, just to give you an example, I was testing the theme for next month's seminar, and improved, exciting, pipeline sessions did not pull as well as transformational. So that's an example, like it doubled the open rate. Does this process always work? Last question I'll take here. No, it doesn't always work. In order for this process to work, the following things must be true. You must have an offer that's actually valuable to the customer, and you have to have sales team members who are committed to the process and are working towards a do or die approach. Well, folks, I think that's our wrap for today. I thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any more questions, reach out to me. And I look forward to seeing you next month when we're going to talk about transformational pipeline meetings. Bye now.